officially welcome everyone to the first candidate webinar of the year of 2017. We're really excited. We're launching a whole new electoral season. My name is Hillary Kane, and I am a Green Party member in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And I'm also co-chair of what's called our Coordinated Campaign Committee, the CCC. And we're the committee that operates at the national level with the Green Party of the United States, whose job it is to support candidates and campaigns. And one of the ways we do that is we provide some virtual campaign training throughout the year. We have a monthly conference call or webinar, and we go over different aspects of running for office. And so tonight, given that it's January, the topic is, so you want to run for office, ... and I'm really excited to be able to turn it over shortly to Jennifer Baker and Alex Shantz. Both of them are Greens from California. Jennifer and Alex have both been elected as Greens to public office. Jennifer is currently serving as a community college trustee in Napa Valley. And they're going to talk about, from soup to nuts, everything that you need to run for office. We're going to do questions at the end, and so we'll do them all via the chat box on the conference call. And I'll also try to grab some from those people out in Facebook land. But because of the high call volume, we're going to keep everyone on mute and just do the questions via chat box. So I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer and Alex and let them take it away, and they'll chat for, a half an hour, 40 minutes or so, and then we'll open it up for questions. So Jennifer and Alex, take it away.
Yes, we're here. Thank you. So we haven't practiced this. We're totally winging it. So we think it's going to be to see what happens. So as Hillary said, my name is Jennifer, and I'm here with Shantz, who dragged me into this mess about a year ago. So, and let's see, Hillary already kind of talked a little bit about the format, but we are going to kind of keep the Q&A toward the end. But if you have a question as we're going along, if it's just a clarifying question, we will try to go ahead and answer it as we go, but mostly we'll probably just wait till the end. But we're going to ask people to use the little chat bubble thing for submitting questions. And then we will, like I said, just go from there. So I was going to do like a little so you think you can dance kind of music riff off this so you want to run for office thing, but my technical abilities kind of, I came up against a wall. So you just have to imagine that. So I wanted to just kind of set the stage a little bit before we get started, just so you kind of have an idea of what we were up against going into this campaign season here in Napa. We were running against a well-known incumbent who had only served one term, but was very connected in our community and actually had been kindergarten friends and lifelong friends with our local congressman, and so with relationship on down, pretty much went into the campaign with every single endorsement all the way from U.S. Congress down to our local mayor. And, wow, bing, bing, bing. Yes. But so anyway, but we still won. So and the way we did it was we pretty much worked our ass off. So we just want to kind of give you, I think Hillary called it the soup to nuts, and we will see if we can do our best to give you at least a little slice of how to get started. So moving on, I think I can just, well, how do I do that? Hold on just a second. My computer's being weird. There we go. Okay. So first thing you want to do, and I learned this one kind of the hard way, is to be able to articulate why you want to run for office. When I first started talking about this and about it, and had actually, I think we may have even done a press release already, and then I ended up at a picnic with some friends, and they introduced me to some people that I didn't know, and then somebody asked me, so why are you doing this? And I kind of just went, duh. And so, yeah, you want to, I will say that this will take you some time, and you'll have to kind of, the more you do it, the easier it gets. I think I had probably been answering that and even doing a relatively good job of it for several weeks before I felt like I really hit my stride and was able to articulate why I wanted to do it. And I think the easiest way to do it was just to break it down into 3 simple things. Just like why this particular position, why me, and why now. And this is particularly important if you're running against someone, but even if you're not, but particularly if it's an incumbent as well. So which we were, and we did end up actually having a 3rd candidate, which I think Alex will talk about a little bit later. Do you want to add anything to that?
We'll probably touch on this a little bit more when we start talking about going door to door. But when you're trying to come up with your brief statement of why you're running, it's good to keep it brief, because once you sort of give people the overview of why you're running, the brief overview, you can kind of tell what their interests are based upon their reactions or their questions, and that'll sort of guide the conversation from there. But
yeah. And when I say in here on the slide, I said have a long version and several short versions. When I say a long version, I don't mean like 15 minutes. I mean like 2 minutes is your long version. Your short version should be like 30 seconds or less, because you may not even get 30 seconds, especially when you're going door to door. So we will get into more details later. So next is you want to build your team. So you want to identify core people that will be kind of your support group, as well as the people who are really going to provide you with some level of expertise and experience. For me, that was Alex and a couple of other people that were just kind of the core group. We had a number of other people that helped us with very specific tasks or things that were short time periods. But I had 3 or 4 people that really helped from the very beginning, and we're there all the way through to the end. And we met once a week from basically, I guess, about June through to Election Day. And again, we had other people that helped us with other things, and we always wanted to keep a running list of different things that people can do, whether that be write a letter, to help us just get signs out, delivering signs, posting signs, making phone calls. We had, again, just that core group of the 4 of us that really did most of the door-to-door stuff. So, I mean, you don't need an army of people, but you do want to have people that you can count on.
Yeah. The only other thing I'd probably add, and this is more applicable to larger seats you might be running for, but like examples of the types of roles you might want filled on your campaign team is like a campaign manager, someone to kind of look over the money, a volunteer organizer, those kinds of things. Social media. I mean, these days it's so dynamic. I mean, depending on where you're at, like it could be, but just
yeah. And I remember, at one point I was filling out one of the endorsement questionnaires for some organization. Whole page of who's doing this for you, and I was like, I don't even know what that is. I'm like, is someone doing that? And so it's like, oh yeah, sure, so and so's doing that. But we did have some official people that were doing things, but a lot of it was just, hey, yeah, just tell them so and so is doing it. But yeah, again, Alex is right. If you're doing something that's much larger, of course, you're going to need more people. Just to give you also a frame of reference for how large the workload was for us. It was a trustee position that represents part of our county for our local community college, and there were 11,000 registered voters in the area that I represent. So it's not huge. It was definitely doable with 4 people.
Yeah.
If we were talking about having to do the entire county or a huge district or a state, then you're going to need way more people, way more energy and volunteers. But so keep that in mind as well. It's good. You have to scale it. So next thing I want to say is make certain that you have a good support system. So this is in addition to your volunteers and your core team, make certain that you have the support of your family, the support of your friends, and the support of your employer when you go into this. I have a full-time job, and I have 2 elementary school kids, and it was this ended up being a lot more work than I had anticipated when I first started. I was thinking, oh, this will be weekends for a while. Well, yeah, I thought it would be a couple of hours on the weekend, and it was a bit of a wake-up call how much work it was going to be, but I was committed to do it, and so we put the time in. But that meant that my family and my employer had to do without me quite a bit. So I'm very fortunate to have an extremely supportive husband and an extremely supportive employer that allow me to flex my schedule. And then the friends, even the ones that are not actively helping you on the campaign trail, as it were, it's good to have somebody that you can just complain to on occasion. There will be lots of opportunities for that. Anything you want to add to that?
I just have a cat, so much more low pressure for me. So
he is a nice cat. Not nice. So okay. So getting into the commitment, campaigning is a lot of work. So you want to make certain that when you sign up to do this, that you know going in how much work it's going to be. I think I've only actually been in the elected position now for 2 months, but and it's a fair amount of work as well. But campaigning, by comparison, is a lot more work. I on average put in about 25-30 hours a week, and that was on top of my regular job. So again, having that really supportive family was extremely important. And I had to, honestly, I mentioned that I had kind of underestimated how much time it was going to take, and I had to, at one point, just apologize to my husband because he was getting really annoyed with me that I was gone all the time. And I just said, I didn't intentionally mislead you that how much time this was going to take. I just didn't know how much time it was going to take. And so, what we ended up doing was we just renegotiated, what we're going to each of us be willing to do. And I said, okay, because I was ready to just do it all the time, and so I was gonna literally be out on the street every day, all day long. And he was like, no, you can't do it. You still have a family. You have to be around every now and then. So we decided that Sunday was the no campaign day, and I wasn't allowed to look at my phone. I wasn't allowed to do email, Facebook, none of it. And so. And I'm sure that the rest of my team got occasionally annoyed with me when I didn't respond on Sundays, but I would just tell them, I'm sorry, Sunday is my off day. You get me tomorrow. So was really careful to try not to overdo it with that. Also be prepared, to put your own money in if you have to. We ended up having to spend, our budget wasn't huge, but about 40% of what we put in for our total was money that my husband and I both put in together, and we gave that to ourselves as a loan, and I'll explain a little bit about that later on, but we anticipated that we might be able to repay ourselves, and we actually were not able to do that. So be sure that you're able to do that if the time and the need actually comes up. Anything you want to add?
Just a couple brief things. And this is true for many areas of life, but I think it's definitely important for any candidate to practice self-care because, if you're not taking care of yourself, you're not going to be as charismatic, or you're not going to be able to make as authentic of connections with people when you're going door to door. So, I think taking that Sunday aside is really important. And then, just wanted to just agree with what she was saying about putting your own money into it. That's something that comes up quite a bit that people look for in a lot of local races. Like if the candidate hasn't even put in their own money, like it sends a message that they're not as serious. So
right.
Now
hopefully the rest of you will make your money back. If you don't, that's okay. I just figured that was the vacation I didn't get. So ironically, I need it more than ever. So Next is you want to know your competition. Is this person an incumbent? Are there other challengers? What's their experience? Do they have a lot of connections? And of course, in our case, that was our biggest challenge, was that the person that we were running against had pretty much all the connections sewn up. And so, you know, I would go to the meetings, and I would tell people people would tell me flat to my face, well, I've already endorsed so-and-so, and I was like, you haven't even talked to me yet. But, you know, you just had, I'm going to talk about endorsements a little bit later on, but you want to make certain that you understand what that person's platform is, assuming that they have one, if they're currently in office and you're running against them as an incumbent, know what their what they have, what's their rapport with other people, if it's a board or whatever it is, what entity it is that they are serving on, what's their voting record, what things are important to them, and how do they compare with your own values, so that you can draw comparisons easily for people, because that's the sort of questions you're going to get when you're going door to door. And if you're not able to articulate that, it's really going to bite you. So, anything you want to add to that before I move on?
We can move on, yeah.
Okay. So fundraising. This is the one thing that I don't feel like we really did a good job, which is probably why I ended up losing that 40%. But, you know, regardless of whether or not you're a good fundraiser or not, have a clear idea of what you need and what you're going to need it for, and when you're going to need it. Because I remember at one point we were putting together a mailer, and all of a sudden it was like, oh my gosh, we have to do that this week, and I don't have the money. And so we were scrambling and and then I had the money and got it in, put it into the bank, and then the guy who was running the credit card called me and said that it didn't work, and so then I had to call the bank, and it was just like, oh my gosh, because so it was literally like by the skin of our teeth a couple times. So, you know what your bare minimum is that you have to have. It's always great if you have more, but know what you absolutely have to have, and then watch every dime. And try to get as much bang for your buck on those things as you go. I got most of my campaign donations from family and friends. I just literally asked everyone I knew, and just, you know, I begged. I was like, you know, give me $25, whatever you have, please, you know, and next time I see you, I'll buy you coffee. And I'm part of a pretty big professional network nationally, so I let those people know that I was running for local office, and as a result, I got donations from people who I'd never even met, but who knew me professionally and were willing to support me in that.
Yeah.
So. And we did have one event. We had a silent auction, and we did like a little kind of a kickoff party. We made a little bit of money there, not a lot, but you know, every little bit helps.
Yeah, I think just to add a little bit. I mean, the best, the greatest leverage any campaign has is the candidate themselves. So I mean, the best way to raise money is for the candidate to ask directly, which that it's based upon experience in other workshops like this that I've been at and been a part of.
Yeah, and then this is the bit I said I was going to talk about with the advancing yourself money. When you do that, be sure that you keep it recorded that way, because if you were to say pay for something and then you didn't put, let me back up. Say for instance, if I had put $200 into my account of my own money, and was using that money, and I hadn't registered it as a loan, even if I had the money, I would not have been able to pay myself back. So be sure that if you do give yourself money, you do deposit money from your own account and use that money, that you keep track of it that way and report it that way, so that you can pay yourself back given the opportunity. And also, make certain that any funds are going in and out of that account that you've set up for your campaign. Don't write personal checks, and you know, if you're using a credit card, which what we did is we used a bank card attached to our the account that was for the campaign. That way we didn't have any questions of who was paying for what. Anything to add to that?
No, not really.
Okay. And then another thing I was going to say, as far as keeping track of funds in particular, one of the things that we did pay for that I'm really glad we did was we got a professional accountant to do all of our paperwork and filing forms for us. It didn't mean that all of the work was off of my plate because I still had to gather all the information and records to send to her to file. But I was really glad to have somebody who really knew what they were doing taking care of that for us, because I did not want to run the risk of doing something wrong that would get us into trouble. So everything else is on this one slide now. So having a strategy, have a clear plan, and make certain that you have a way to make it happen. Of course, there's lots of different ways that you can run an election. For us, this was a local thing, and one of the reasons why I am a member of the Green Party is because I really believe in the whole grassroots concept, and so we ran this campaign from a very grassroots point of view. We did a press release right off the bat. We went out looking for endorsements. I have to be honest, I'm not sure how much endorsements really count. It's hard. It's easy to say that since I didn't have any. and I mean, I had the Green Party, and then of all the people that I asked, I think I asked, oh my gosh, I met with probably 25 different groups and individuals in different holding in various offices, and I only got one endorsement, and I didn't even end up using it. Because that one in particular was controversial, so I put it on my website, but I didn't go out and actively say, hey, so-and-so endorses me. And it became really clear, that my opponent, that was where his strength was, that he had all the endorsements, and he seemed to kind of rest his entire campaign just on that. And I think that was what really did him in, because, for better or for worse, at least in this community and the people that we were talking to, that just didn't ring for them. And so I think if you can get the endorsements, by all means, great, but don't rest on them. You still have to do the work, and use them as your backup. Don't use them as your calling card. When we did our walking piece and our mailer as well, everything that was on my opponent's walking piece and on his mailer, that's all it was a list of endorsements. And it didn't really say anything about what he had done and what he was planning to do, which is where we were. So again, if you can get them, great. And also, know your community, know what they respond to. Look at what's happened in previous elections. If it's something that's really important in your community, definitely push it to the. But don't not try for them. But if you don't get them, don't give up.
Yeah, I think just real quickly, another reason why I think, because the way most of these endorsements work, like all the unions, for example, are dominated by the Democratic Party. So it's like, that's just to be expected. I think that it's still useful to go through the process of asking for the endorsement, because, you get the questionnaire, you read the questions, you get a sense of the issues that group is concerned about, and then, when you're actually showing up for the interview, like, even if as an organization the union is just do whatever the Democratic Party establishment wants them to do, you never know. Like, maybe there are a couple Greens or a couple, independent-minded people on some of those central committees or union councils or whatever that are sympathetic to what you're saying. So, you never know where you're going to make those kinds of connections.
And yeah, and also you may not get an official endorsement from those people, but they might be willing to help you behind the scenes. Yeah. Because like I have a number of friends in the area that I call my movers and shakers, people who, are executive directors of big nonprofit groups and other organizations here in town. Because they are affiliated with that organization, they were not at liberty to give me a formal endorsement, but I would meet with them and they would tell me, you need to talk to so-and-so, how about you try this? And they would give me, advice and lead me toward other connections, even though they weren't able to come out and formally endorse me. One of our big strategies was letters to the editor.
Yeah.
We our plan was to get minimum one a week. And we started, I think our first one came out in end of July, and I was trying to count them up the other day just in my head, and I think we ended up with about 30 different letters to the editor. We specifically targeted getting people to write them, people that I knew that were well-connected, well-respected, and people who knew me in different capacities. That was another thing that I think the incumbent did not do a really good job of. He had a number of great, he did get a lot of ink, but they all said the same thing. They all just kept talking about the exact same traits.
And weren't really heartfelt or anything.
No.
They didn't really tell you much about who he was as a person or his character.
Yeah, I mean, there were a couple that were good, but it just kept coming down on this same 2 or 3 points. And whereas I was like, I would call somebody and say, I'm really looking for someone to write a letter for me, and I'd really like you to do it because I feel like you know this about me, and would ask them to write specifically to that particular experience or that particular trait. And the other thing we would do is we would ask them to send us the letters if they were willing. Everybody was. But we asked them to send the letters to us so that we could review them before they were submitted, check them for typos, to see if there was something that needed clarifying, or if they didn't, make sure they had their facts correct. And also it gave us an opportunity to make certain that they got put in at specific times, because we contacted the newspaper early on, asked them, if we want this to go into the weekend or the Sunday paper, when's your deadline? When's the best time to get it to you? And of course, they couldn't give us an exact time, but we kind of figured out early on that, okay, get it to them Wednesday night, and that's for your best bet to get it in on Sunday. But sometimes, it would go in on Saturday, or sometimes it would come in on Monday because they had to manage the flow of other things coming in. But we made certain, that did help us to make certain that we didn't end up with like 3 or 4 getting submitted all at once and having 2 or 3 weeks with nothing. So having that kind of process set up helped us kind of make certain that we had a constant stream of good stuff coming out. The website, we had a website and that we put up primarily just as a place for for people to kind of find us if they needed it, but we didn't really use it so much as we could have. I'd say if you have people on your team who have the expertise and the time to do a really good website, that's definitely a must-have. For us, we did a great job getting it set up, and then as we moved into the season, it kind of just was like, oh crap, I forgot to put it on the website, because there was just so much to do. But we really, really, really use social media, and we've got a whole slide about that coming up. So the mailers, the signs, walking pieces, we got all those things ordered. That's where our basic things that we ordered, that's where most of our money went. And then phone banking and robocalls, video messages. We worked with our local, what do you call it, just TV station, like the local access.
Yeah, just the local.
The Wayne's World kind of thing. Dating myself. So we had they made a free video for us, and so we were able to use that on Facebook and other places as well. And then we did phone banking, and we also did do a robocall because actually I think we ended up doing that because we were just exhausted. And we had like 3 days left, and we had all these phone calls to make, and I was like, I just can't do it. So we kind of, I think it's always going to be better if you get an actual real person, but when you have to make 5,000 phone calls and you've got 3 days, it just wasn't going to happen.
And your kids was in that, which
was
cute. So
yeah,
it was cute.
You want to make
it was a cute robocall.
Yeah, Alex is referring to the message that we did. We did it kind of kitschy, where it was like, okay, if we're going to do a robocall, let's at least make it fun. And so I just basically said, hi, this is Jennifer Baker. Well, actually, it's a recording of Jennifer Baker. Let's be honest here. And then I said, don't hang up, And then my kids at the events at the very end yelled, vote for mommy. And I don't know. I actually did hear from one of my neighbors that that they heard it and they thought it was cute. So let's see. Let's move on. So social media, I definitely, it worked for Trump.
Just memes. You got the right memes.
Yeah, and it worked for us. So we knew that social media was going to be a huge piece of what we did from the get-go. We did primarily Facebook. I did end up adding a Twitter and Instagram account because I wanted to basically have multiple voices because I really wanted the Facebook account to be more of a professional kind of third person voice, but I wanted to also have an opportunity to actually talk to people through social media without diluting that. So we ended up using Instagram and Twitter for that. But we integrated them I used a program called IFT. It's IFTTT.com. So it's if this, then that. And basically we had it set up where anything that I put on Instagram automatically went to Facebook and Twitter as well. And so that way you wouldn't have to continue to put it in 3 different places. And for me, I just think it's a fun thing because what I found out was that I was going through, as I was going door to door, I was having conversations with people and seeing really neat things, and I was taking pictures of stuff, and I'm like, I want to be able to share this with folks. And so that's what I started doing. Was like I'd be talking to somebody and their dog would wander up, and so I'd take a picture of their dog and I'd post it on my Instagram feed, and those things really actually they added a personal touch, I think, that people really responded well to. And then we did a lot of sharing and boosting. Boosting is definitely.
Should we explain what that is?
Yeah, if you're not sure, if you don't know what boosting is, when you have a website, or sorry, a Facebook page, and you post something, whether it be just a photo or a link to a letter to the editor, whatever, we would go in and you can basically pay to have it appear on other people's Facebook feeds, and you can be very targeted about who you want to see that. So we went in and we designated an area by geographic region, like we based on district. We said we wanted only people that were over the age of 18. I think we even said people who followed education, so that because you're paying based on the number of people who see it. We wanted to make certain that the people who saw it were relevant. Yeah. And then we also just asked people, straight up asked people, share this, share this, share this. And the other thing I would do is when you're putting in with the letters to the editor, they don't have photos. And so if you did a link to your letter to the editor, what I would do is I would go in and I would add a photo, so that because it's much more eye-catching and people are more likely to read it than if it's just a link. So with social media, we wanted to be really careful that we responded to comments and messages very quickly. We kept it professional. We didn't attack anybody. If somebody attacked us, the only time we sent what was going on the Facebook page was when we got trolled. We had some people that really just got on and were just being nasty for no good reason, and so we deleted those. But Facebook, thank goodness, has a really fantastic thing where you can delete stuff and nobody knows you deleted it. At least the person who wrote it doesn't know you deleted it. So they can still see it, but nobody else could.
maybe just real quickly to go back to boosting, because I think this is another example of how we were using social media strategically, because our opponent also had a Facebook page, but I mean, he comes from a different generation that's not as immersed with social media as we are, so he didn't exactly know how to use it effectively. So, I mean, I think towards the end of the campaign they caught on that we were boosting, and that's why we were getting all these views and all these likes, and then they started doing it towards the end, but, I mean, just point being, they were playing catch-up. So that was another example of how we were able to use social media to build some momentum on that front.
And I don't know if when they started doing that, if they were doing targeted stuff either. They may have just been boost it, boost this, but you know, when you boost something, you could be boosting it to the whole globe. And then, you know, so if you're, I don't want to pay for somebody in Japan to see my letter to the editor. I want to make certain that the person who's seeing it is somebody who lives in Napa who might vote for me. So, again, with the, if your opponent attacks, whether they attack in a forum, or they attack in a, you know, a letter to the editor written by someone else, or they do it on social media. You know, we took the cue from Michelle Obama. We stayed high, even when they went low. And, you know, that was really hard because it was very, it was very tempting to lash out because we had some legitimate ammunition that it was very hard not to use a couple of times. We did have some other people that ended up doing that on our, not really on our behalf because they didn't do it in our name, but it did get out there. But it was nice to be able to, it was nice to see that happen and not have to have gotten our hands dirty. Because I think that would have, there would have been some backlash if we had done that. Because I know there was backlash on their part. There was definitely backlash on their part.
Because there was, I mean, we won't go into the details, but there was a forum that we were at where our opponent attempted to attack us, you know, and it backfired. People in the audience were booing, and it didn't really work for them. So
didn't come off very well. So yeah, and fortunately, I was so taken aback that I didn't even respond. So even if I might have, I didn't. I was just kind of like, what just happened? So yeah, that was bizarre. So anyway, we just did our darndest to stay professional and control the narrative. And when they did start their, you know, misinformation campaign, we just kept trying to bring it back to the issues. At one point, I will say that was the one time that we almost got kind of off strategy. Was we did spin our wheels for maybe a week or two when that first started because it was so out of left field and so unexpected and emotional. I mean, it's really, when that sort of thing is happening, you're going to have an emotional response to it. So we just we started to kind of spend a lot of time on it, and at one point I just said, you know what, we don't have the resources to spend this kind of time on trying to solve this. And so we just said, you know, let's move on, face to face, focus on the voters, and not worry about this. So on the signs, keep it simple, keep a list of where they are. We made a little instruction sheet that we left if we were putting it on somebody's doorstep that asked them, you know, make sure you put it where people can see it when they drive by. We tried to be very strategic about where we were putting them. If I saw a house that had my opponent's sign, I would go across the street and just say, hey, you know, introduce myself, and even if the person wasn't a voter, just say, hey, can I put a sign up? And sometimes they said yes. And so cross streets, high traffic areas, even if they weren't in my district, if they were on high traffic commuter routes, we did that. I always kept extras in my car, hammer, screwdriver, and water. That is because out here in California, it doesn't rain for half of the year, and it got really hard to put those signs in the ground because it was like concrete, and so we have to wet the ground and then hammer it in with a screwdriver and then plant the sign. So we asked friends, we asked friends of friends, and just, do you know anybody that lives over here? Do you know who owns that property? We went and checked with the public library, who owns that property, and then asked them. And then we went around and picked them up after it was over. And again, and also because we promised that we would do that. Another thing, keep extras in your car. We had one location where we had to replace the sign, I think, almost a dozen times. And I don't know if they were being stolen by somebody, or if it was being malicious, or if it was just somebody being stupid, you know, kids or whatever. But every time it would disappear, I would just pull over and put in another one, and pull over and put in another one. I remember one time when it finally did start to rain, it was pouring down rain. I thought that one at least will be there for a couple of days because nobody's going to steal my sign in the middle of a rainstorm. So let's see. So the public forums, be sure you're invited. So if League of Women Voters, make certain they know who you are. Make certain that they know you're running. Find out where the different forums are. Have your friends keep their ears out. One time we had a local person who had a television show who put out an open invitation very last minute to come and appear on his TV show. He said, anybody who's running for local office, come on down. And I didn't see it, but one of my friends did. They called me. They said, you got to respond to this. And then I did. I ended up being the only candidate that showed up, which was really awesome because I got the floor to myself, and I got like a good 30 minutes. It was fantastic.
Was it already party?
Yeah, already party. Consider the possible questions that you might get. I kind of think of this as being like preparing for a job interview. Think about what they might ask you. Write out your answers to that. I wrote out my open and closed pieces and practiced them. I printed them out in large print and highlighted the keywords I wanted to make certain that I used so that I didn't appear that I was reading something, but I could glance down and make certain that I brought up points that I didn't want to miss. I took notes like crazy that I couldn't even hardly read. Anytime my opponent was talking, so I can make certain that I, circled back and redirects and then practicing segues. This is something that I did not do well on the first forum, but I think I did pretty darn good in the subsequent ones. With, I kept waiting for them to ask me the question that I was prepared for, and then when they didn't, I was frustrated. So what I did the next time is I was like, okay, well, if they don't ask me this question, how can I work this in to the answer to another question? Yeah. So be prepared to do that as well.
Maybe just to add briefly. So one thing we did, I feel like going into the forums, we had a pretty good idea of what the opponent was going to say. We knew, what issues he was trying to highlight. We knew his talking points. It was pretty static, and that made it easier for us because we could already address the issues he was going to speak to and then quickly pivot and be more dynamic and talk about a bunch of other things. And so I don't think he was ever really able to fully kind of respond to that.
Yeah, I think we caught him off balance a couple of times.
Yeah.
So and maybe because I did not do as well on the first forum, although people said I did all right, but I didn't feel so good about it. But he was not prepared for us the second time. So this is where the rubber hits the road, literally, if you have rubber shoes anyway. So going door to door, this was the most important part of our campaign, and I can't imagine that it would not be effective in any campaign because people want to meet the candidate. They want, and if they can't meet you, they want to at least meet someone who stands by you, that believes in you, and can tell them about you. So, check the weather forecast, wear your sunscreen, take a hat, snacks, water, extra batteries for your phone, everything, walking literature. I went out, I walked for 20 hours a week. I did 2.5 hours every day, 4 days a week, and then 8 hours on Saturday, sometimes more. I lost 20 pounds, so hey, it's a great way to get fit is run for office. If the stress doesn't get you, then you're walking well. Figure out kind of what works for you as far as going out, whether or not you want to go by yourself or going with other people. I tried it both ways, and I personally liked going by myself better. It meant more having more control over where I went, how long I stayed someplace, not having to worry about where the other person was. But also sometimes it was nice to go out with the team, at least at the beginning, just so that you had kind of, you just knew you weren't out there by yourself. Yeah. And then if you say you're going to follow up with somebody, make certain that you do it. I'm going to talk a little bit about our walking lists in a little bit. So what do you say? Introduce yourself, why you're there, use the voter's name if you have it, and then keep it simple. You kind of learned how to read people.
Yeah, yeah.
You could tell, from the way that they opened the door, whether or not you were going to get, 10 seconds, or if you were going to get 30 seconds, if they were going to come out on the porch and start talking to you. Mm-hmm. Have an exit strategy for the people who are willing to sit down and take 30 minutes of your time, because there are people that will do that. And engage them. A lot of times what I would do is I did my little, spiel, and I would say, hi, my name's Jennifer Baker. I'm here because you're going to see my name on your ballot in a couple of weeks, and I'm running for such and such office, and really, really quick, this is what I do, this is what what I'm interested in, and then I would say, and what's your connection to the college? And then I would turn it over to them. Sometimes they would say none. Sometimes they would say, oh, I went there, or oh, my kids go there, or I'm thinking about going, and then that gave me something to pivot on when I was talking to them. And we also had a really good list that we were using. I don't remember which slide that is. Is that my next slide?
This one,
yes, it's my next slide. Fantastic. Okay. So we paid for lists from the registrar's office. Yeah. And so we got a list of everyone that lived in my district that was registered to vote. And then we figured out we were not going to be able to talk to everyone. It just was not physically possible because we didn't have enough volunteers. So we prioritized who we needed to talk to. And for us, that meant we were going to talk to anyone who was an active voter, and we defined that by you voted in the last presidential election. So we sorted the list by who had and had not voted, and then we basically printed out those lists. And the way we did it is that we had their name, their address, and if they were registered with the party, what that party was, which was helpful when you were walking up to a house that was registered Republican. You knew, okay, maybe this person's going to be concerned about the finances or something like that. So it kind of gave you a way to approach them. And then we just had a space in there where you keep track of any notes that they had, and so that you had from talking to them. So if somebody mentioned that they were really concerned about a particular issue, I would write that down. And sometimes I would just write down, oh, they said that their daughter went to school there, or that their grandson is working there right now in the police academy or something. So I would write that information down, because it gave me, if I did have the opportunity to follow up, it gave me a connection with them. I also noted if the person wasn't home, so that later on when we started doing phone calls, we prioritized our phone calls as well. So we started out calling people whose streets we had already gone to, but they weren't home when we went by. And then we also did a list of new voters, so people who had registered to vote since we originally ran the list. We ran the list several times. We actually ran it at the end, and we were running it twice a week, I think, so that we had any new people. Also, we knew who had already voted, because in California you have early voting, and so we were like, we're not going to waste our time calling people who've already voted. So we just went ahead and took those people off our list. We also prioritized calls for any gated or restricted communities. So if there were communities that we weren't able to get into to talk to them door to door, people got phone calls. And then I also, the other thing I did was I put a little note here, personalize the mailers. That was just something that I did that was kind of fun for me when we did the mailers. Normally they just say to voter or resident or whatever, and then we actually put the names in, and then if I had actually talked to the person, I would put something in there that said, to the owner of the really cute dachshund named Gracie or something like that. And again, I heard from people later down the road that they had, oh, I got my such and such, and oh, it was so cute that you put that on there. So, and my husband had a really great idea that I didn't get a chance to follow up on, was to just put a nice little affirmation in there that says, oh, you look really nice today, or something like that. So, it was just kind of a personality thing.
Regarding lists, did Joanne help us with the lists?
Joanne did.
So what I wanted to say about the lists is these lists are really important, and they can be really difficult to know how to use and manipulate if you don't have any experience. And fortunately, in our county, there's a friend who has helped us in the past. She's done a lot of campaigns. She knows how to cut these lists and spreadsheets and all that. I think it's worth highlighting that I know that the Green Party uses Nation Builder, and I know they've had webinars in the past to help sort of train people on how to use it. So I would really encourage people, whether you're a candidate or like on your own county, Green Party County Council, to find someone who's more computer list savvy and, reach out to the Green Party and get help and training on how to use that, because it's a resource that we have, and it's underutilized, and it's ridiculous, frankly, that it's underutilized. I mean, if we want, I'm going off on a bit of a tangent, but if we want to start winning elections as a party and start taking this stuff seriously, we need to know how to use this stuff. So
absolutely, and it really did make a difference when you could walk up to somebody's house and call them by name and say, hi, my name is Jennifer, and blah blah blah. I mean, occasionally somebody would look at you crazy, like, how do you know who I am? And I would just say, well, because you're registered to vote. Thank you very much. So again, with the robocalls, I think we already talked about that a little bit. We kind of got that in a little early. Oh, and then, okay, so election night, to party or not to party? I was conflicted about it, because I was afraid if we had a party and A, nobody came, or B, I didn't win. And so we finally just decided, you know what, I want to have a gathering, but I want it to be the people that have been here all along. So we just basically invited our volunteers. We did open it up to anybody who wanted to come, but we didn't advertise where it was. We just basically said, you're invited. If you want to come, let us know, and we'll tell you where it is. And we ended up just being a nice little gathering with us, and a lot of really awesome food and some wine, and which we drank copiously, especially by the end. The funny thing was is that I actually know that I won until the week of Thanksgiving, because it was so close that they didn't call it until about a week before they actually legally had to certify the election, because they were counting and I guess recounting, and I think by the end of election night I was up like 11 votes or something ridiculous like that. It was so close. It was, and we actually had a reporter from the paper called for a comment, and I remember saying, something like, well, 11 is better than none, or something like that, and just saying, this is great, this is fantastic, And I spun it because we actually did have that third candidate that was in there that had polled actually quite a lot more votes than we anticipated. So I just said, if you add up the votes I got and the other candidate got against what the incumbent got, it's obvious people want change. It just kind of left it at that, and it did end up that I won. It was a little anticlimactic because I was alone in my kitchen making Thanksgiving dinner when I got the phone call. But hey, you win, you win. So, and then the next part was actually, don't really need to get into right now, but just, meeting up with people afterward and just kind of, it's interesting, you get in on the inside of this, and it's like people that were not particularly nice to you during the campaign all of a sudden want to be your best friend again. It's you just smile and give them a hug and move on. So, I've kind of been sort of out of the corner of my eye watching some of the questions coming in, and I don't know if Hillary, you have any that you want to make certain that we get. I think we're done for now.
Yeah. So thank you guys so much. I am sensitive to time, so we'll probably go a little long, but there were definitely some questions about money. Your comment about putting in your own money. Which I think is totally valid and true, though it might scare off some folks. And I think there's just questions of like, well, how much? And, So if you maybe want to go, I can also sort of, answer from a different perspective, but I don't know if you can just shed a little bit more light on that.
Well, I can tell you that our total budget, again, this is a very small area, very grassroots. We spent a total of about $5,000 on the entire campaign, and a little over $2,000 of that was my personal money. I know that there was another candidate that was running for a different office here in town, and I was meeting and talking to her one night, and she told us that she spent something like $20,000 or maybe $30,000 of her own money, and I remember thinking, I don't even have that much money to put into this, and I just, let alone if I did, I could think of so many other things I'd rather spend it on. So I didn't have, I didn't put a lot of money in, but given that I didn't have a lot of money to start with, it was a lot because it was basically all of my personal savings, and then I put in some money that my husband gave me as well, but because but I knew I wanted to do it, and kind of once you were in for a penny, you were in for a pound. It was like if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it to win. And I remember even having this conversation with my husband about the amount of time I was spending on it, because time is a precious resource as well, and that I didn't want to let other people down. It's like if I do this and I do my best and I don't win, that's fine. But if I don't win because I didn't try hard enough, then I'm not going to be happy with myself. Yeah. So I knew that I wanted to at least do the best I could, and for me that meant putting in some money.
Great. And I will just say that we have run people who are out of work and have do not have two nickels to rub together, and that is part of what they're running on, those kinds of issues. And so you don't feel like you have to put in your own money, but you're trying to convince other people to put their money in, and if you do have some, part of the way of sort of demonstrating your seriousness is by investing in your own campaign, within reason, within limits. But certainly, we do not have a track record of self-funded millionaires in the Green Party. That's for sure.
I wish. No, yeah, and also, being smart about the money that you have. Our opponent did 2 mailers. One of the mailers he did was huge. It was like 18 inches or something like that, and full color both sides and everything. And then he mailed it to everybody in the county, which I didn't understand, because why would you send it to somebody who isn't going to vote for you? Mm-hmm. We were very specific about first off, we did a really cute little postcard, and we thought, well, people will think it's cute. I don't know whether they did or not, but that was how we kind of made ourselves feel better about our sad little postcard.
That's what stood out there, because it was like the type of postcard you would get from like a family or a friend, and especially during campaign season, you're getting these massive mailers, like multiple times from the same candidate, and then a postcard. So this is so. I think it does kind of catch your eye a little bit.
And it was nice. We did a little, cute little picture, and just kept it simple. And then we only sent it to people that we knew would vote. So we didn't waste the postage and the printing on people that couldn't vote for us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great. All right, I'm going to switch over to Facebook, and it looks like we have a couple questions about, just like how much does it really take? So it says, does a green run have to be full-time? So do you have to basically, work full-time as a candidate? And does one need a campaign manager to run for an office?
I don't know that you need a campaign manager. Alex served as my campaign manager primarily because that meant that he could sign things. I don't know. You just need some people that are willing to help you. Of course, this is a very small town thing. If you're doing something on a much larger scale, you do want to have somebody that can kind of hold all the pieces together for you, especially if you have a full-time job like I do. And so it's, it was a you can't go into this thinking that it's just going to be, a few hours a week, because it's not. Not if you want to win.
I think
Yeah,
ideally
agreed.
it's good to have a campaign manager separate from the candidate, especially for higher races, because, I mean, you know, if everything's working the way it's supposed to, the campaign manager should be doing most of the work. I mean,
wait a minute, you mean you were supposed to work more?
No, but you got your money's worth out of me. So,
that's right, that's right.
but yeah, I mean, so yeah, that takes pressure off the candidate. I mean, basically, you know, that takes pressure off the candidate so they can, you know, focus on being an awesome person, you know, to talk to voters.
Right, right. Yeah, but it just you know, it just depends on what you have available to you.
Yeah,
but you really you think about that going in, that it's not just about money, it's about time, it's about people that are willing to help you. You know, I was thinking we were going to have a lot more volunteers than we did, but it still was fine. It just meant that those of us that were in it had to work that much harder.
Yeah.
Great. All right, I'm going to take one more question, and then I want to wrap it up with a few parting gifts for folks in terms of other resources. So we have another question from Adam, who says, for an office with a quick turnaround, meaning a 2-year term, what are your thoughts on running a name recognition campaign to set yourself up? So I don't know if he's meaning like it's for the next cycle. So
I mean, it's hard to say. I actually recognition in town already, even though I hadn't run for office before. I'd actually been the center of a rather large scandal the year prior.
I thought about you, actually.
So there was, I mean, and again, that you have to be cautious about whether or not that could come back to bite you. In my case, I was the victim of the scandal, and so it actually played off very well for me. But a lot of people, and that was actually kind of funny going door to door. People would be like, "Oh, I know who you are," and I'd be like, "Okay, is that a good thing, a bad thing?" But you know, people were sympathetic,
yeah.
And which is again why he got booed. So yeah, so it was. I can't think that it would hurt unless there was something that in your closet that you don't want people to know about.
Okay, great. All right, well, I just want to say thank you both so much. This was really great, and you covered a lot of territory. But the reality is that in some ways you only just scratched the surface, and there's just so much to campaigning, even when it's a relatively small local office. But it is a ton of work, but it can also be amazingly rewarding. So I just want to, leave folks with a few things. So I'm going to take control back on this webinar. And hopefully folks are now seeing my, and so for people who want to dig deeper and get more information, certainly you want to contact us. You can get me through Facebook, gp.org, which is our more public-facing website, but gpus.org, and then you navigate to committees and then coordinated campaign committee. And this is where the recordings of all previous calls are. And so these calls are things we did last year. Almost everything's basically the same in terms of the information. And there's a variety of things here, whether it's around fundraising, going in deep on fundraising. We talked about voter databases, planning for a vote. All of this is here. I will warn you, these are just raw recordings. Not the most exciting to listen to, but they do have some really great material and information. The other thing that I want people to be sure to know about is that at the national level, we're also trying to launch an issue-based electoral strategy. And so if you are interested in running for office and you want to make racial justice, water, or voting rights central to your campaign, so for example, Greens for Racial Justice, we're basically trying to launch an issue-based platform to highlight candidates and campaigns that are raising up racial justice as a major issue. And there's all kinds of ways you can do this as a local candidate. maybe you're going to run for school board and talk about, zero tolerance policies and the school to prison pipeline. That's a thing, and we need to talk about it. And so just know that there's Greens for Racial Justice, Greens for Voting Rights, and Greens for Water. And at this stage, we're in candidate finding mode. So if you're running for office, if you care about these issues, we want to know about you so that we can promote you. If this is not the issue that you want to run on because it's just not your thing, it's not the local context, whatever, that's fine. I realize I'm not sharing the screen right now, so I'm going to try that again. Please run for whatever issue moves you, of course, as long as it's a green issue. But, particularly if you're running around water, racial justice, or voting rights, we definitely want to know about it. And if you go back to this website, which hopefully now people are now seeing, so again, it's gpus.org, navigate to committees, and then coordinated campaign committee. And not only is the link for monthly webinars here, but also links to the issues. Greens for Peace is also part of our strategy. It's really foreign policy focused, and for 2017, since it's only a local election year for most folks, we're probably not going to put energy there right now just because of limited time and attention, but definitely on the water, racial justice, and voting rights. So that's all we've got for tonight. We hope you will join us for another webinar. They basically happen mostly on the fourth Tuesday of the month at 9 o'clock. So we will be putting out information shortly about the February call. If you RSVP'd through the Green Party website, we now have your information, and you will be on a list to get information in the future. We also post it on Facebook as an event in the Green Party of the United States Facebook calendar. And that's all, folks. Thank you very much, and thanks to Michael O'Neill and the Stein World for live streaming it. And good luck, everyone. We really want to hear about your campaigns. If you are not connected to your Green Party, let us know so that we can connect you, and let's get out there and shake some stuff up this year. Thanks, everyone.